Well, welcome in, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of the Buddhist Biohacker. We are creating conscious content for 1111D, and my name is Lisa, your mystic guide, and I am very excited because this is our very first show with my husband. We've never done a show together before. So welcome to my beautiful husband, Scott Gunshore, and I did say beautiful. And we are excited because, to give you guys some context before I announce our very first guest, Scott and I decided to create a music project called Pulscension. And it was really a combination of Scott being an expert drummer and myself being all woo-woo. So we thought, let's put them together and do something for the planet and heal with music, but also talk about how healing music is. And we wanted to start with Led Zeppelin because Led Zeppelin's probably the reason that we're married. And yes, I'm pretty sure, and I guess I could let Scott tell the story, but I'm pretty sure he said when he saw that I had a Led Zeppelin 4 poster in my apartment on our second date, that was probably sealed the deal for him. But I also am excited because my dad's going to pop in tonight, and he took me to Page and Plant. It was one of the most amazing concerts. My dad did very well. My very first concert was Michael Jackson. So I really got lucky having a dad who loves music as much as my dad does. And so I grew up listening to Led Zeppelin all the time and know the words to every song. And they are so freaking spiritual. And welcome to everybody who's joining in the live. Please share in the live chat, and welcome to all the members who are using all our fancy emojis we have. So I just wanted to give context to you guys. We're going to start, and I am really excited because when I met Scott, he told me all about drumming and all these things about drumming. And one of his favorite YouTubers is the BONZOLEUM channel. And we're here with Terry. So welcome, Terry.
Hey, you guys. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Lisa and Scott. We appreciate it, man. That's really, it's really nice of you to have me on.
Well, we're excited because I love your channel and I don't know anything about drumming, but I probably know more now than I should after being with Scott for 5 years. But
well, yeah, he'll hook you up.
Yeah. So Terry, I got a backstory is when I went and met Lisa, and we just had some conversations and we're getting to know each other, and it was one of those things like, well, you always wonder, do you have similar interests and things that you're gonna rally around? And so I went over to her apartment and she had these Zeppelin posters. So she's got that one picture there we'll talk about a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
I had a poster up when I walked in. I was like, are you kidding me? Is that Zeppelin 4 right there? And so since that time, it's the thing that always we come back to and connect more and more on. And so I showed her, I'm like, you gotta watch this guy. It's like the guy you hang out with, it's 100% authenticity, and he nails bottom licks. It's like incredible, mind blowing. And there's this humor you can inject in it. Like you have these toss off comments that they just, I don't even know. Were you a comedian or practicing comedian at any point?
No, but you know what? I've determined that a sense of humor, it's a defense mechanism. It is. It's a defense mechanism. I mean, not necessarily a conscious one. I mean, I'm sure there's, maybe people in jail, if they're scared to death, they're like, wait, what was that joke Ronnie told last week? So he didn't get his butt kicked but no, it really is. I used to sometimes say, like, a sense of humor sometimes is an apology up front for somebody when you feel like, if you have really low self-esteem or you feel like you're an arsehole or something, like the class clown person. But no, I mean, I guess if I had some huevos, I probably might try to do an open mic or something. But it's never occurred to me to walk up in front of people.
Well, plan B. That sounds
you know what I mean? The unknown comic.
When I told her about you, I don't remember how many followers you had, because it was a couple years ago. How long have you been on the channel now?
I started, the first video I put up, I think was in August of 08. So almost 13 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's been a while.
Years ago, and now to look at what it's become, it's incredible. And it's.
Thank you.
I mean, and you deserve it. You know, every fan you get, every follower. And
I appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So Lisa, I'll let you take over, and I'll try not to step all over the conversation. Lisa's gig, but can you tell Terry and the audience about the photo next to you? Because the irony is, if you looked really close, I don't know if you could see, but it really resembles her.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like that's what I like.
So,
it almost looks like Stevie Nicks / Lisa.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So here's the funny part.
I got you. Okay.
It was painted before the person met her, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's my story about this. So I actually was in fashion before I did psychic work full time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I was the director of stores for Kid Robot, which is vinyl collector or art toys. So I ran all their stores, and it's all street art. And
that's a big gig.
Yeah, and it was pretty wild. And I had stores from New York to LA and got to travel a lot. And it was probably the most epic time of my life too, because I was single and I was just traveling and working all the time and meeting all these street artists. And Jermaine Rogers is a really well-known street artist. He's done a ton of artwork. I think Tool posters, and I mean, just you name it. I mean, he's just awesome, and you guys can follow him everywhere. But Jermaine Rogers came and did a signing at one of my stores, and he and I started talking, and he's like, dang, he's like, because I didn't really like outwardly talk about what I do. I didn't tell everyone I was a psychic medium. And so he and I were talking, and he starts talking about very spiritual stuff, like while we're hanging out after this art signing. And I was like, seems like you're pretty woo-woo. And so I started telling him about what I did.
Right.
We never actually talked about Led Zeppelin, which is really peculiar. So the next day, this was at our corporate office in Boulder, Colorado. A man dropped something off on my desk, all rolled up. And it was Jermaine's assistant. And he said, Jermaine happened to have one of these prints with him. So he signed it for you. He said it reminded him of you and he wanted you to have it. So it turns out Jermaine was actually asked by Led Zeppelin to do a poster art for one of their album re-releases. And
wow.
It.
Get out of here, really?
Yeah. And so when you look at this, you can see the hermit, the hermit's up here.
Oh, yeah.
And this person is not supposed to be a woman, I don't think. I actually think it's supposed to be like Robert Plant, maybe. But it has all the symbolism in it.
Roberta Plant.
Yeah, and then it has a tarot card, which is something that I read. So it was just really epic. It was like one of those things, and he signed it, which you can't see because it's totally in pencil, but you guys can see the symbols, of course.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So nice. It was just this wild thing where it was like crazy stuff happens in your life. And I was like, holy cow, I can't believe he happened to have it in his suitcase. And what's even more incredible is back in 2009, I wrote a piece about Stairway to Heaven and this is where we're going to get all nerdy. And this is where I need the two of you to bring all your knowledge, because what I realized in 2009 is that the Stairway to Heaven lyrics is really the pathway to self-realization. And so I wrote this whole article. You guys can actually find it on my blog at lisamgunshore.com. It's called Stairway to Heaven. It's really awesome. And I was like really into the fact I went through every single stanza of lyrics and talked about how our planet is changing. And it's all there. And it talks about that path to self-realization, just like there's this lady we all know, this idea of the divine feminine and all of these incredible things. So it really got me to thinking about what the heck is behind this. And what's even weirder is that the cover of Led Zeppelin 4 is the 10 of Wands from the Tarot. And then the Hermit is like the symbol, which is another, that's the 9 in the major arcana in the Tarot. So it really got me thinking, like, what's going on here? Like, these guys knew some stuff, and I found out some cool information. We were even talking about it today, but I do kind of want to share this with you guys and then get Terry, you and Scott's take on this, because it's pretty rad. Like, if you look at, so I'm going to share my screen. So, yeah. So this is the cover of Led Zeppelin 4. You can see this man, he's burdened. He's carrying all these sticks on his back.
Yeah.
And if you look at the 10 of Wands in the Tarot, see here, I'm going to pull this up. This is the traditional 10 of Wands in the Tarot. So it's very,
I see. Okay.
Similar, very similar. And then, of course, you know, you have the Hermit. And when you look at the 10 of Wands, it's all about burden and carrying a heavy load. And the Hermit is about when you realize kind of that the heavy load can be released because you're looking at yourself and it's self-realization. So very interesting thing. So I want to get you guys talking. I've got some info I found today about what Jimmy Page had to say about all this.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm curious what you guys have to say. Like, I don't even care where we go with it. I just think it's fascinating, their symbolism and their spirituality.
You know, the funny thing about, you know, Stairway to Heaven is, you know, it's really, that's really a song that I think when you hear, like, when they were recording it, I mean, you know, they didn't have any idea. Like, people used to say to, like, John Paul Jones would say, you know, what was it like when you were recording Stairway to Heaven? They're like, well, it was just another song. You know, we didn't know it was a session date and we're, you know, overdubbed, you know. But you know, Robert Plant would be a hell of a guy to talk to about that, because he's a card carrying he's a folkie. He's a card carrying folkie. You know what I mean? Who almost like passed himself off as, like, you know, the golden haired guy, but he was a folkie, man, standing in front of, you know, 3 of the best musicians around, you know. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's neat though. You know, I've never really paid that much attention to the lyrics. Like, people always blow me a lot of crap because with music, I don't really listen to the lyrics unless it's often a chord. To me, the lyrics are just the skeleton that the melody hangs on. You know what I mean? I mean, I know, and that drives people crazy sometimes. I'll be in, you know, bands for years. I'll be like, yeah, and we get to the part that says, yeah, and the cheese is all wicked. They're like, the cheese isn't all wicked. It says the me's is ficked. You know, what the hell's the matter with you? We played the song, fight. You know, like, I don't even know the lyrics even after I've been in bands for years and years and years.
What I love about that is a total drummer response.
Well, do you know what I mean? Are you kind of I mean, I don't, to me, it's just, it's just they're singing. I don't care what words they're using to frame the melody. You know what I mean?
So there's certain things I'd say for Led Zeppelin, I paid more attention to the lyrics. I'm a big Yes fan. I like John Anderson's lyrics.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of that era. But I agree with you in that sometimes it's like carrying a mood or an emotion even more than a logical meaning.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes it's the feeling that hits you when you're hearing the lyrics. You're not necessarily taking in every word that they're saying.
Yeah, right.
But I'm curious too with all of that stuff, and everyone knows what you know, what kind of things Page was digging into. Do you think all 4 of them kind of weighed in with some of the mysticism, or do you think it was really driven by maybe just Page and Plant, or maybe just Page and Plant just wrote lyrics that kind of chased the theme?
Well, you know, I think what happened with Zeppelin is Jimmy Page really wanted to, you know, he saw the success that Cream had in some of these bands, and he wanted to put together like a power trio. But in the end, I think they ended up doing 4. You know, like, we'll get a guy that just sings, he plays harmonica too. But on the front end, I think Jimmy Page, you know, when Robert Plant, I remember Jimmy Page saying when Robert Plant got comfortable writing lyrics, it was great, you know, because I think mostly, I guess what I'm saying to that question is, I think it's Jimmy Page and Robert Plant are very, you know, are very spiritual that way. They used to go off and I can't pronounce the name of the cottage. We always call it Bronner, but there's some Gaelic prince. I always think of the 30 Rock where they talk about the rural juror. Remember the rural juror, the show she was on? People are like, the what? And I think of Bronner, but that's where they used to go off. And it's not, I think with Zeppelin, they were very, a lot of those bands, when they wrote that stuff, they weren't necessarily, they were really, just letting it sort of flow out. I know that Robert Plant or Jimmy Page said that the lyrics came, I think, pretty fast to Robert Plant. There is a run through or two when you hear some, you can get your hands on some of the bootlegs of Zeppelin when they're getting ready to track or rehearse. In the old days, there was one called like Tangible Vandalism, which was like physical graffiti, but they put their little spin on, tangible, physical, and, where you can hear them going over sort of Stairway to Heaven. And the lyrics are a little different. You know what I mean? And the song is almost like, it's just interesting to hear that, because you're so used to hearing Stairway to Heaven when it's done. I mean, Stairway to Heaven as is a song. It's in itself almost an institution. Do you know? I mean, the studio recording of Stairway to Heaven is almost like you almost don't want to know any secrets behind it. You don't want to look behind the curtain.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Although I do. I'd love to go back and see what cymbals John Bonham had on his drums at the time, and how many different takes they did of this. But I think that there's all, it's funny though. There are certain lines in that song that always stood out. Like I always loved the line, "There's a feeling I get when I look to the west." And the funny thing is that because our kitchen used to face, well, when I grew up, the house still faced, the kitchen faces west. And west is, there's something about west. Do you know what I mean? The direction, the sunset. And but I've never really read, too much into the lyrics proper of that or any song. But I do know, one thing really with Stairway to Heaven that is so neat is Jimmy Page often describes it as he wanted to do something that's sped up. And I know for me, that's a little poor choice of words, because I think what he meant was maybe something that goes from point A to point Z. It goes faster. It gets more intense. It gets more emotive, that kind of thing. And, Jimmy Page set out to do that. That was the thing they really wanted to do. And I think they succeeded, man. I mean, Stairway to Heaven. I mean, it's a great tune. And if it is like with music, if music is some sort of a emulsifier or I don't know, solvent to try to, sometimes with music you can say more in a few bars of music than you can in paragraphs and paragraphs of words. Do you know what I mean? And maybe I think Stairway to Heaven seems to have both of that. It's great music, it's done just right, and then you have the lyrics.
So what was your first Zeppelin album that you like listened to through and like it hit you like a ton of bricks?
Well, when I was really, really young, we had at the house, my dad, we had albums, and I remember we had this frickin' song. What was this song? Seasons in the Sun. We were we had Seasons in the Sun. And sometimes I like to think that song sometimes almost put a curse on me. If you listen to the lyrics, it's pretty effing sad. You know what I mean? Goodbye, Dad. It's hard to die. I remember suddenly maybe that's where all my disorders stem from that freaking song. But I remember looking suddenly at other records, and we had some Monkees stuff. Like we literally had some Monkees. I remember being devastated that the Monkees fan club had closed. My dad had a bunch of Elton John. But I will say, as far as Zeppelin goes, I'd heard, Stairway to Heaven, so many times. And my brother had, I think, 3 or 4 Zeppelin vinyl albums. He had Zeppelin 4, Houses of the Holy, The Song Remains the Same, the live one, and maybe Zeppelin 1, I forget. Because I ended up buying like Physical Graffiti and In Through the Outdoor and stuff. But I would say yes. And then what happened is I remember listening to Stairway to Heaven, I think just Stairway to Heaven. Like at that time, I would only listen to Stairway to Heaven over and over again. Do you know what I mean? And in those days, if I remember, was Stairway to Heaven the last song on the first side on the vinyl? I forget. But you know what had always happened? You'd try to drop the needle and you'd always catch the tail of the end of the song before it. So eventually then you'd slide in, you'd listen a little earlier than the tail end, and then eventually you'd listen to that song. and then listening to that song. Then eventually, after a month, I'd eventually listen to the whole record. But I think, I think that is a great record. I think that, that's 1971, November of 71. And a lot of real cool music came out in like the fall of 71. You know what I mean? Am I just babbling? I hope I'm not babbling.
I love it. Go for it, man.
No, but I just I remember listening to listening to going to California and Misty Mountain Hop and when the levee breaks and stuff and so that was probably the first Zeppelin record I probably really listened to was Zeppelin 4 because of the song Stairway to Heaven when I was 5 or 6 years old, maybe, or 7, maybe.
How about first song you tried to play on the drums, and how old were you?
Well, what happened with Zeppelin was, you'd hear it on the radio all the time. Back in those days, you'd always hear Kashmir, you'd always hear Stairway to Heaven. When 1979 rolled around, you always heard Fool in the Rain was all over the place. You heard A Whole Lot of Love all the time. And I think what happened was I didn't start playing drums until 1982. My friend Darren Schoeneman he's like, Terry, I got a drum set. You got to come over. I know you love the drums. Let's play. I play guitar. And we went over and he used to make up songs. I would sit and I didn't have a bass drum. So what I did was I just had 2 tom-toms, a floor tom and a snare and a cymbal. And what I did is I put a towel on the floor tom. And so I would play the ride with my left arm and go like boom, ba, boom, boom, ba, boom, boom, ba. So I'd play the bass drum that way. And we would pretend like we were Led Zeppelin. Like we made the stage look like Madison Square Garden in 1973. There's little glitter on the stage. He had like his fuzz box. He made himself like a dragon suit. But it was, I don't know. I think the first song, because what happened was I eventually got my dad was in TV news. So he had this tape recorder that I used to I found up, I probably recorded over all these tapes that I shouldn't have recorded over. But it was probably from the mid 60s, late 60s. It had a little mic. It looked like a pack of cigarettes, the microphone that set on legs and a little cord. And I would go down to my cousin's house, or in our house too, and I would just listen to the loop, or WF, or double at the time, WMET. And I would set the microphone in front of the speaker and I'd wait for a song to come on that I wanted to tape. So if I heard the DJ saying like, all right, you're not coming up Kashmir, I'd hit record. You know what I mean? So then I had it actually on what I think was I guess it was 1/4-inch tape, I suppose. But the first song I probably actually played along to was probably Kashmir, maybe. I think Blair, just because it was kind of so, straightforward. Yeah. Till you get to that one part, which threw them off sometimes.
Yeah.
Like there's that show where John Paul Jones totally gets caught with his pants down. Jimmy Page and John Bonham do the change, and John Paul Jones just like, dun, 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 dun. And he finally just sort of stops. And I think he sort of sits there like, God, here we are in front of 22,000 people at the Forum or whatever. And I don't know what the hell. It's pretty funny to listen to. My George Flutist. You guys know George?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He turned me out. George is like the Zeppelin fan. I'm telling you, he's like the triple, what are they, like the Triple Crown, the hat. He's a total expert on John Bonham. He's a total expert on everything Zeppelin. He's a full blast. He's a totally professional drummer. He's been playing drums professionally for, I think, 35 of his 52 years. And there's nobody that plays Bonham or tunes a drum set better than Bonham than George Flutist. Yeah. And that is a fact. You've seen it. You know what I'm talking about. He just does.
Had her dad watch the video clip. I said, watch this guy play an entire Led Zeppelin concert from start to finish, like the whole thing.
Totally.
It's incredible.
And he could probably do that. And I'm not exaggerating that much. Even if he didn't listen to it while he played it, he could probably sit and say from his memory. Now I'm exaggerating if we were going to say like a show of him like hand, but George is probably familiar with enough stuff where if he wanted to, he probably could. It's almost like that. What's the game where you memorize the patterns? Like bam, bam.
Yeah, Simon
bam,
Says.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Simon Says. That's what happens when you're really interested in something like that. You remember it kind of like that, Like I know like the song remains the same, live Zeppelin record, even though it's a compendium of like the 3 different nights. I know that even after all this time, like the back of my hand, even though I haven't heard it in its entirety for 20 years. But George is like that probably, I'd say with probably at least a good 10 or 15 live recordings. And the skill required to do that is unbelievable. You got to have a great memory, but you also do have the ability to translate it properly. Like there's a lot of like the reason why I got into videos making, I saw people doing like Fool in the Rain videos, but they just weren't playing it right. Like I saw Steve Smith, the drummer for Journey. God love him, a great drummer. He's a great educator. But he was in a video. He was like, and here's Fool in the Rain. But he wasn't playing Fool in the Rain. He was playing something harder and more like a, Rosanna Shuffle, more, like a, but it certainly wasn't Fool. And I just thought like, I just didn't like how people would steamroll over that. So I'm like, what I'm going to do, well, let me just put a couple of these videos up and just see. But yeah, I mean,
how it started for you. Like, so I'm interested in like, walk me through how you got to the point where you're like, okay, I'm going to do, true John Bonham, break it down. Here's what I figured out that he does. Like, at what point did you decide to start making videos to do that?
Just to be 100% honest, the most rabid Led Zeppelin fan I ever was probably from about 1980 to maybe 86. And what happened is when I made the video in 2008, I made 3 videos. I played the intro to rock and I didn't say anything. I just sat down. I just did. I played the intro to rock and roll. I played a little bit of the verse beat from Fool in the Rain, then a little bit of the sort of like the bridge chorus kind of, on the bell. And then I did the crunge, which by the way is wrong. I was playing the crunge improperly. But I just threw those 3 videos out and people kind of started to like them. So I started making more. But then an interesting thing happened is people started asking about stuff. Now I'm obsessive. I'm OC. So there are times when people would ask questions about certain things that I'd get a little hairy for me, because then I have to think to myself like, okay, do I now want to, this question this person is asking about this song, which I think I know what they're doing. I have a pretty good set of ears. Do I want to go down the rabbit hole of learning it? Now, right off the bat, somebody might say, "Oh, come on, don't be lazy, just go to." Well, the thing is, if anybody who kind of seriously has some OC, it's not necessarily the most pleasant feeling to feel like, all right, in the next hour I have to have this done or the world's going to blow up. Like that kind of a thought. And you're not that. The world really won't blow up, but you're like, all right, well, if I'm supposedly Mr. Zeppelin, I have to, So there were certain things that were, I'd be very grateful if somebody said, well, hey, the end of rock and roll. I'm like, well, I know how that goes. I'll make that video real fast. You know what I mean? But then somebody might be like, well, Terry, what is Bonham doing on like one of the hardest ones that I found was like, what's the Zeppelin fans are gonna kill me now for not knowing the name of the song. But Zeppelin 3.
Brian, your stomp?
No, not Brian, but it's God, what is the song? Hangman. Oh my God, Gallows Pulp.
Yeah.
And but see, the thing is, that's why I got to tell you, there was a time, and I'm dead serious, in like 2016, where I kind of felt like I was going to have to like level with my Led Zeppelin fellow fans, and say, listen, you guys, I got to tell you, there are some Zeppelin, like if somebody says to me, Terry, this concert, especially now at the internet, there's so these concerts, somebody's like, hey man, I got a full Osaka, and these shows, Zeppelin, they're killing it. The thought of me like spending, even if somebody said to me, Terry, I'm from the Led Zeppelin Foundation, we're going to give you $100,000 a year to dissect these 40 shows, do it at your own pace, make videos on what you think he's doing, I'd still kind of be like, I would, because there's like an OC. So my point is that when George came along, I was almost like, it was like, yes, like I am the chocolate, he is the peanut butter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he, you know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about? So, no, but so what happened was I just started making videos like that, and I did another one, then I did another one, and then I thought I'd do this, and then I started listening to more Zepp again. I'm like, well, I should probably get back into more listen. I mean, I know it, you know, like there's so many things you just know when you hear the song. You know, I mean, it's so ingrained in my head, but I started listening to it again, not just to go over it, just to make sure I didn't mess something up, or because that happened a couple times too. I remember a time I was going to make a video on a song, and I didn't even listen to the song. I made the video, I uploaded it, it was up for 4 or 5 minutes. And then I was like, oh my God, and I had to like get rid of it and redo it. And because I'm like, you know, so, but there's a lot to it, you know, there takes a lot of, it's a lot of work, you know, it's not easy, you know, and it's, you know, for people, you know, for me, or especially for George, who's so talented with it, when you're so interested in it and you love it so much, obviously it makes it so much easier because you're drawn to it and it's not work, you know, in a certain sense. Although I must confess, for me, sometimes with certain obscure Zeppelin stuff, the drum parts and stuff, sometimes are a little work for me. And sometimes I'm kind of like, you know, I don't know what he did. You know, George, what do you think, buddy? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And George is like, well, this is what I think he's doing. And then, you know, sure enough, it sounds just like the freaking record, you know, or just like whatever Bonham actually did.
So now you got me thinking, or I'm curious, are there other bands or other songs of bands you like where you have that attention to detail, where you obsess over how it's played or figuring it out, or did it just become a Zeppelin thing for you?
Well, honestly, so much of I always appreciated the way, you know, the funny thing about Zeppelin is that it almost seems like, you know, Bonham was really like, is really like the conductor for Zeppelin. Sometimes I feel like what would happen is when they'd settle on the arrangement, almost like George does it with the songs, like Bonham, I'm going to go in real fast, I'll lay a couple takes down. And he just, sometimes when you hear him singing or you know, making those noises, it's almost like he's like, okay, guys, there's the 5 minute, put your stuff on top of it. And then Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones would know how to play exactly to Bonham's time. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, there's no doubt that I'm sure that they track stuff, you know, sometimes it would just be Jimmy Page and John Bonham, they go through it. But it almost, you know, but really you can really just hear the way that it's with Zeppelin, it's almost like hearing an orchestra, but as a band. Like, that's why, like, sometimes, you know, I will sometimes harp on the whole concept of a click track and a grid, not for sometimes the reason you think. I mean, you know, that's one thing too. Like if you have a really good, and this is the thing that used to like with the click track back in the day before digital editing now, where you can flick a switch and sort of smooth it. Like, yeah, you played 75% and click, now it's great, you know? Well, in the old days with tape and stuff, you know, you had to be pretty damn good to play to a click. So if you could play to one real well, you didn't need one for tempo's sake. Do you know what I mean? But you know, sometimes they'd use it for scores or whatever. But you know, it's just weird with Zeppelin. It's very, not to, I mean, I know the word is overused, but very organic. Do you know what I mean? Like when you listen to like Harris Alhambra, you know, they bring da na 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 na, bring it down here, da da, bring it down here, ba. Yeah. It's not, we're just making that eighth note a 16th, and the whole tempo map is changed. And, you know, it almost be like when you hear symphonies, you know, you see a symphony set up. All right, everybody, you guys got 104 in your headphones? Tick, tick. Yeah, all right, let's go. Let's do bait. You know, it doesn't work that way. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'd say the different bands you're talking about. Yes, when I was younger, I used to really, really listen. And Beatles, I used to really, one thing that always stood out with me with Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and a little bit of Elton John was the difference in the sound quality of the stuff from early 60s to the early mid-late 70s. Like I remember thinking to myself, like, why does this sound different? Like I remember when I first got into Zeppelin and heard Stairway to Heaven and When the Levee Breaks and stuff, it was so beefy. But then when I went back and I got Led Zeppelin 1, you know, from 1968, and I put some of the songs on, I'm like, God, this, you know, this sounds so like, you know, that 60s kind of sound that I wasn't too hip to, you know what I mean? Like when you listen to like Dazed Confused band, like it just sounded corny kind of on the front end. But I would listen to certain, like I would just listen, like, God, how do they put that together? And looking at like the Monkees records and some of these records, you'd see the microphones they'd use in the studio. You'd see these massive RCA mics. And I always thought it was kind of funny looking. You know, you have this image when you're a kid that they record all these records with like 4 or 5 SM58s. You know what I mean? Just put them around the room wherever. You know, we'll run through it a couple of times, and there it is. You know, and then you realize like the work involved of crafting a recording. You know, there's just so much to it apart from the musicianship or the song you have or where you put the microphone or this. You know, there's just a recorded song is like a fingerprint. It's an artifact into it of itself. You know, that's why I was always so fascinated. Like now on YouTube, you can find all these different, a lot of these tracks. You know, there's Drumless, or a lot of bands put this stuff out with not garage band. What is the thing? Rock Band or whatever. So you can sort of listen to the individual stuff. I'm fascinated by that stuff. But I'd say I probably put the same attention on detail to the Beatles early on. Definitely the Police. I'm a huge Police fan. And not just for Copeland. I'll tell you, Sting is an arrogant guy. I think but the fact of the matter is that guy is so talented that he can afford to be. I think that he really probably, when he was growing up, he was very erudite. He probably read a lot. He probably grew up with a lot of people that, he liked and respected, but kind of was like, boy, man, it would have been great to go off to university. You know what I mean? And then as he got older, ironically, he had to sort of play a punk. He had to play sort of a role to achieve the end, to get the means to get what he wanted, which is a fact. And he'll tell you that, Copeland, the guys will tell you. But really, like the Police, like I'd love to have, like to interview like Hugh Padgham or Stuart Copeland, or of course, Jimmy Page or John Paul Jones, especially because John Paul Jones with the, if I couldn't, I'd like to interview Robert Plant. That'd be great. But, Robert Plant, he's a card carrying folkie. He'd be like, I don't know. There was a microphone there. I don't know. It was silver, I think. I think it might have been plugged in. That's probably what Robert Plant would say, Or Jimmy Page would probably be suspicious and be like, well, I don't know. We used a ribbon mic and, but no, do you know what I mean? So yeah. I love, that's why like with George and I and this guy, Billy Harrington, and some of our buddies, we're dying to find out like what happened to like Bonham's original gear. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of a fun jaunt kind of thing to do, but we're also dead serious. One of these days we might go to Jimmy Page's house. Ding dong. Put a fake pimple here, and he opens the door. Does this smell like chloroform? You know what I mean? We're gonna find out. Rupert Pupkin. We're gonna find out where all Bonham's gear is. How many takes they did of this? You know what I mean? How many?
Terry, I am a psychic medium, so maybe I should just ask John myself and see what I can find out for us about where he put his gear.
You bought him, he'd probably say, listen, Lisa, you got to take this guy and put him out of his misery. That's probably what he'd tell you. You know what I mean? Here, take a sip of this, buddy.
I did talk to David Bowie recently for my husband and some of his bandmates, but I've never tried to talk to John Bonham, so maybe I will, and I'll report back to everybody because that might be an interesting conversation. And it's an interesting thing because I'm listening to you guys talk and I love it so much. And I'm definitely not a drummer. I am definitely a writer. So the lyrics are like everything to me.
No, of course. And I don't mean to belittle that.
No, you're fine. But I think the bigger thing that all of us are feeling, I'm going to bring my dad out too, because I think the thing about the spirituality and the music and the healing part of the music is even when we go, there's a really great, cover band. Scott, what's the name of the band? What are they called? Is it Zoso? I think it's Zoso.
Oh, is it a Zepp cover band?
Yeah, Zeppelin cover band. I think it's Zoso is the name. Yeah, and
we always mix. Lisa and I always mix them up, which is why I'm not going to.
I do too. There's a lot of Zepp cover bands.
There are, whatever one it is. I think it's Zoso. But when we go to see them, the energy and the passion and it's an experience, it's an experience, whether you're listening to the album or whether you're listening, live. And this is my dad, Keith, for everybody out there.
Hey,
and my dad has seen, how many times have you seen Led Zeppelin? Or did you see them?
I saw Led Zeppelin 5 times. And I saw, of course, Page and Plant with Lisa. Took Lisa to Page and Plant, which the Page and Plant, talk about the quality of the earlier recordings versus the later ones. Same thing with the concerts. The Page and Plant concert was by far the best sounding concert, and sounded true Led Zeppelin. I mean, just have Page and Plant there. The feel was the same as the earlier concerts, I thought. So But I was lucky to live in Denver, and Denver had Fayline Productions. Barry Fay was tied in as good with the music industry as anybody. He could, I think that what they said is he could sell tickets.
Yeah,
and that's
right.
why everybody came, so the Who and Zeppelin and all those people would always come to Denver for Barry Fay. So I actually had a stack of concert tickets in my bedroom growing up, about an inch and a half tall. And I used to know, just by the seat number, because they tear off the band name off the stub, but which band it was. But so we saw everybody, but Led Zeppelin was always my favorite by far. And I think it was, I'm like you, Terry. The lyrics, I guess I can't always make them out totally, get them wrong or whatever. Everybody will tell you now I don't hear so well. I'm wearing hearing aids right now, but I probably couldn't ever, probably because I sat in the front row for the Who one time. But
190 decibels.
Yeah. But Led Zeppelin was, those were some memorable concerts. You talked about Stairway to Heaven, Led Zeppelin 4, that concert. Yes, Stairway was the fourth song on side one. The first song was Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
And so that concert, I think I remember the best because it started off. So all the concerts started off, there was an opening band, right? And they bring in somebody that, was pretty decent, and they'd play for 45 minutes or something. And then they'd break while the main band got set up.
Yeah.
But this time we got to the concert at the Denver Coliseum, and
the Coliseum.
We looked on the stage, and from having the Led Zeppelin 4 album that had just come out, we saw all these, symbols that were on the album up on the stage, particularly Bonham's drum set. The bass drum. We thought, what's going on? Led Zeppelin is already set up. And so eventually the lights went out, and, you're expecting maybe some guy at the folk guitar is going to come out and play for a while, but the lights went completely dark, and all of a sudden the drum set lit up. He had the clear drum set at the time, and drum set lit up, and it was Rock and Roll started the concert.
Oh yeah, he slayed it with Rock and Roll.
It was just incredible because it just started off that way and continued to get better for the whole concert. So
oh my God, man,
that was a good one.
That's wonderful. Oh my God. And in Denver's the first when they came in 1968, their very first concert in the United States, North America, was in Denver.
Right, and I think that might have had,
I'm not mistaken,
some Barry Fay connection. I know the band that was the main band was Vanilla Fudge, I believe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, when they first came, sure. Yeah, they were
and I can't remember the band that they lost, and they needed somebody to fill in. Well, I think actually maybe it wasn't they lost them. I think Vanilla Fudge pushed hard for Led Zeppelin, to Barry Fay for Led Zeppelin to open up the concert, and I think they paid him some crazy amount, like $100 or something to play. Yeah. And a couple of the early on concerts of Led Zeppelin, I think it was maybe two, Jimmy Page got up there, and I think two of the concerts he actually apologized to the people in Denver for that first concert. He said, people were ready to throw stuff at him on the stage. Nobody understood it. And, they were trying to make up for that poor performance the first time.
Yeah.
Which of course they did many times over. But,
oh man. Yeah, they, that's amazing.
Yeah. But I'm like you. The lyrics, I like the lyrics, and I like it now that you can go to lyrics.com and you actually can.
You're right. Totally.
We're saying it's like, oh, he wasn't saying that at all. It was, haha, I laughed myself.
I just learned 4 Sticks lyrics recently, and I was like, I had no idea that those were any of the words to the song.
As I get older, I find myself, I kind of re-examining, like listening lyrics. So, oh God, that's what they're, like totally, like what's, I used to like Whoopee Cat. I always thought that, what is the song? Misty Mountain Hop. I always thought that Robert Plant said, so Whoopee Cat. I'm dead serious. Whoopee
Well,
cat.
the one I just recently looked up, and I can't remember the song. I think it's off 5, but it was There Ain't No Companion Like a. I thought it was like a blue-eyed girl, right? It's a blue-eyed Merle, a dog. There ain't no companion like a blue-eyed Merle. He's talking about his dog and not a woman. So, I just learned that one. But
Plant's pretty sharp, man. He again, he's a card-carrying folky. He's an interesting guy. You know what I mean? He's a spiritual guy. Him and Jimmy Page. I think Jimmy Page was like more into the occult. You know what I mean? Maybe is almost. I'm sure it was probably kind of a hip thing to do maybe in those days, or to go down that route. But where I think flat out Robert Plant, I think was just a total like a hippie, as you'd say, a total flower child. You know what I mean? And but yeah, so I happen with all kinds of bands going and looking the lyrics up just to kind of see what it is, and I'm surprised a lot. I'm like, wow, that's pretty deep.
Eve commenting in the live chat, she said, "Damn," she said, "it's not Whoopee Cat." So apparently,
Whoopee Cat. I really did. I thought it was Whoopee Cat.
So Lisa, you probably have a list of 20 questions. Maybe we got to one of them because Terry and I are just riffing. Do you have stuff you wanted to talk? Specific questions you wanted to ask that I should?
You know what? I love all this talk. So I think where I want to go now is the and there's feedback. Dad, you might want to mute yourself. Might be my dad. But yeah, I think where I want to go is the healing behind the music. We were talking a little bit about it before we came in, and I think for me, as a creative person who sees multidimensional realities, there's something about listening to Led Zeppelin that just completely takes me to a different space. And there's something really powerful about it. And I often wonder, what the heck were these guys doing? Because it's genius music. It's not like, we just all love it, because it's good music. There's more to it than that. There's all these layers. And I think that's what makes it so special. And there's only a handful of musicians out there that can make us feel that way. So there's something happening there. And it is healing. Like there are times where I need to get in my car and I just need to blast that music. My very favorite Led Zeppelin song is Battle of Evermore. There's something so powerful and potent and incredible in that song with the harmonies that just affect my whole being.
Yeah.
And so I think what is it for you guys? Because you guys are drummers, and I love what you brought up, Terry, about the healing part, but even the OC part, because we're going to have Jeff Strong on next month. And Jeff Strong, for everybody who doesn't know him, is a acclaimed drummer and a creator of the Strong Institute.
Oh, nice.
And, and he literally wrote the book on how to home record. But he also, his institute heals autism and OCD and ADD and all those things through drumming. So it's really, really powerful stuff. And I'd love to hear from both of you about how drumming has healed you, how it's changed your life. What is your thoughts on all of that?
I'm going to jump in. What you brought up, Battle of Evermore is one of my favorite Zeppelin songs. And what I loved about all the albums, or most of the albums, is those interludes, those folky, non-drum, come down type songs. They it was like an aperitif or like a
no, I know it, like a saltine you're gonna have to cleanse the palate before you move on to the red wines.
Yeah, and they're like beautiful, and they sound otherworldly, and they also almost sound out of place because you're like, man, it was all heavy, and then all of a sudden it's it's very airy. So I love listening to non-drum Zeppelin tunes.
I do. I too.
I come out and do the acoustic bits and go into California and all that.
Like Tangerine and
Tangerine. I love love that tune.
Man, you're making me think, because going to California is another one of my tops. And when my dad took me to Page and Plant, I mean, it was Robert Plant by himself on stage, sitting on a stool with all his golden hair and black leather pants, singing "Going to California," and it just
Yeah.
moves you. It's like it's the ultimate. It's the
Yeah.
ultimate.
Yeah. Those lyrics are really great too. You know, it is. Well, I think what happened with Zeppelin is, you know, like when Crosby, Stills and Nash came, you know, it's sort of like that easy listening thing came out around the time Led Zeppelin 3 rolled around, you know, like, you know, and I think Zeppelin got lambasted for like, you know, they're trying to kind of do like their little you know, because critics always, they need something to talk about, you know. And there's no doubt, I'm sure at the time when they were talking about doing the record, they were probably like, yeah, I mean, maybe, I'm sure they were thinking about Crosby, but they weren't necessarily trying to copy, or it was just that time. You know what I mean? It was a real organic time. And, you know, granted by, you know, what's actually what I really like is I really love on Physical Graffiti is it Bronner? Not Stomp, but just Bronner.
Yeah.
And I'm pronouncing it. I've had a Gaelic person try to tell me.
Yeah, that one where it's got like the reverse effect on the.
Yeah. Oh, that's just beautiful too. I mean, that's just really rich, and you know, all that stuff. But again, it's almost like even a song like that. You know, even like that, you know, Bonham could, if he, you know, he probably could. They could have figured out a way to put drums on that where it probably wouldn't have sounded tacky. I mean, you know, even it's almost like, you know, Four Sticks is almost an acoustic song, but you know, the way that he you know, that's a really interesting song in and of itself too. The whole Four Sticks thing, you know, lyrically and the sound of it, and how and I think, you know, Zeppelin was, what they used to do sometimes too is they would mess with the speed of stuff too. Like I think what they used to, sometimes they'd track stuff and then they'd slow it down to, like when you, like on a tape machine, if you sit and let's say we roll the tape right now, and we go boom, ha, boom, and you really, really slow it down, that is going to sound like, you know what I mean? When you really slow it down, it thickens it up. And I think there's certain recordings where they slowed the drums down to make them sound fatter and richer. But then what they also did sometimes would speed the vocals up. Like when you listen to The Song Remains the Same on Houses the Holy, I mean, that is, if you were listening to Plant singing the vocals, I can guarantee you that's not how, you know, if you were to slow that down, you can hear, but they did it for effect. You know, it's another tool in their toolbox to, you know, I don't even know what made me go off the tangent of the instrumentals. I'm sorry, but you know, but they used to use the tape and like instead of just the instrument as an instrument, you know, whatever it takes to get, like the way I've always seen it. Like again, when I used to listen to the, you know, the early Zeppelin versus the later, you'd hear out, you know, or the Beatles' first couple records versus like Abbey Road. You know, the sound itself is almost an instrument. Do you know, like if they, what I try to say to people is, let's say they when they filmed The Godfather, let's say if you go back in every scene in The Godfather that they ended up using in the theater in the final cut, that you had an iPhone and you sat right there, you know, with the picture and with the camera from there, and it was the exact take they used from the exact angle where that 35mm camera was, it'd be interesting now as an after thing to see, like, because we've seen The Godfather stuff, but it you know, the filters they put on the cameras, the sound, you know, there's so much, you can call it the final product, or you can call it just the final thing. I'm just always, you know, mesmerized by the final recording itself. And you can call that a book when it's done, the final, you know, somebody finally finishes a book and they pull these chapters out, it's that thing. Or this movie, they pull this is the final edited, you know, it's a piece of art in and of itself, apart from the fact that it has music on it, which is art. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know. Zeppelin really seemed to be cognizant of that when they recorded stuff, it seemed.
Yeah, I think you know, what you're talking about is getting the right sound to get the right emotions. And, you know, that's what I had trouble with my sound on my phone, but, you know, I never really paid a lot of attention to the lyrics. When I would listen to Led Zeppelin, I was, you know, I would feel it, you know, you'd feel it throughout your body, you know.
Yeah, right.
Really zero in on the drums, or, you know, whether it was the guitar or whatever, and it's the feeling you get from it, and the spirituality, I think, is what Lisa was asking originally. And you know, I don't know if it's spirituality, but it's the emotion. It's the emotion that it drives within you to listen to Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, right.
It's some of my best thinking. You know, I spent my life as a salesman on the road.
Oh, wow.
And did a lot of thinking late at night with Led Zeppelin playing as loud as I could in my car. You know, so it was just great.
So the sound engineer guys would call it like capturing the room, but like what Terry's saying, I think is beyond room. It's like the atmosphere. Like,
yeah, it's
all the air and space around it, and there's some kind of energy in there. And some bands capture it. Led Zeppelin's not the only band that captures
it. Right. That's true.
They really captured that, which is why so many people refer to their sound as heavy. It's like such a heavy sound because you think, man, there's heavier bands, and there's been heavier bands, but
yeah,
always be heavy because of that atmosphere. You know, like somehow they captured this intensity.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing when you listen to those albums. Like they just never, like they hold up to anything you listen to. You know, everything's very digital and processed today.
Yeah, and
they still hold up, man. That's what I find amazing.
Well, you know, it's like bands like that. It's so much of it is like 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = infinity. You know what I mean? Like, you know, they wouldn't have been the same band at all if they didn't have Bonham, or if they didn't have John Paul Jones, if they didn't have, you know, there's sometimes so much to a combination of elements to make something that goes into it. You know what I mean? And that's why, you know, when Zeppelin, you know, they could have, I mean, God, at that time, remember they were going to go on tour and John Bonham passed away. I remember in Chicago, the Chicago Tribune, there was a full-page ad. I can't remember if it was in the front section, the Chicago Tribune section, or it was in the Chicagoland section or whatever it is, or I think it was the front. I think it was the third or the fifth page. It said A&R Concerts presents in tandem with Concerts West, Led Zeppelin in concert at the Chicago Stadium. And there was an order form. You'd peel it out of the newspaper. You'd write with a pen, and you'd put your check or money order in. You'd mail it off, and they'd send you the ticket. The day that was printed in the paper was the day the news came out that John Bonham died. You know, and look, you know, a couple, you know, it took what was it? Finally, December 4th, maybe. So a few months later, they just said, listen, we can't, they had that statement, we can't continue it. They very easily could have, you know, they could have, you know, the money involved and stuff, but they're like, you know, we were just, that was that one thing, you know, and that when he was gone, that was it, you know. And it's neat that I think Robert Plant and Jimmy Page did the stuff in the 90s, because in the 80s, that didn't, you know, Jimmy Page was doing the Firm and stuff, and I think Jimmy Page had some problems, maybe some addictions and stuff. But it was really neat when they did the 90s thing. They had, who did they have on the drums? Michael Lee?
Yeah.
They had, and he had that really like a 12 by 50, and he's since passed away too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but he was a great drummer. You know, those guys, it was great, man. That was a heyday, the mid 90s, you know, when those guys were doing their thing to get, you know, the Lead and Page and Plant and yeah, but do tell Lisa, do tell more about like, you know, you're talking about like the healing and stuff, and like remember you were talking about the
Yeah, you know, it's kind of a funny thing. I am a sound healer, and it just sort of happened. It's actually pretty crazy. I did musical theater and sang in school and played the flute. I think my dad was hoping I'd be another Jethro Tull, so I was playing the flute all the time. Never listened to so much flute music as you did if your dad liked Jethro Tull. But so, you know, I was really musical always. I mean, that's definitely something that's been a part of my life, and I love music, and I really love music that like, I like the heavy stuff. I like stuff that's going to make me cry, that's going to make me feel something. Like,
yeah, feel something.
I really love that. I know the night of me and Scott's first date, and we were talking about our favorite songs, and I said, well, you know, my dad's and my song is Lucky Man from The Who, right? Isn't it The Who? ELP. And we used to sing it in the car and sing about the Lucky Man. And Scott was like, I don't even think I've known a woman to know what that song is. And I'm like, I love it so much. So I love that stuff. Yes, I love that
Yeah.
stuff so much, and I love the lyrics, for me, so I'm a lyrics girl for sure. I really listen
Yeah.
to what they're saying and how it feels. So anyway, what happened really naturally was I just started realizing that I could heal people with sound, and it's become a huge part of my life, and not sure where I'm going with it yet, but we got this gong, which is behind Scott here, and that was a pretty cool story. So the gong is a perfect alchemy between my husband, who's a drummer, and me, who's a psychic medium. It's like this bringing together of our gifts and the powerful experiences people have had when we play it, and how they feel when we play it, and what it does to our nervous system. So it kind of led me, Terry, down this rabbit hole of like, wow, what does this stuff do? Like, what does this stuff do? Because it changes your nervous system, it changes your brain waves. And then Scott introduced me to Jeff Strong from the Strong Institute, and he's amazing, and learned that there's so much with drumming that can actually change your brain waves. And he's come up with what's called brain shift radio. So he actually has a radio station where you select what you're experiencing. Are you having trouble paying attention?
Yeah.
Are you
like your melody?
Yeah.
Yeah. What melody do you got? All right, we're gonna give you When the Levee Breaks, buddy.
Yes.
Like say 10 Hail Marys. Wait, no, let's play no quarter. No, I know what you mean though. That's brilliant, I think.
Yeah, it totally is. So, I think that, what I see, Scott showed me this show. You're gonna have to remind me the name, Scott, but we watched this show with all these musicians who hung out in the basement, and then they ate this really good food. What was that show called?
You're losing me. What?
Is it a Daryl Hall thing?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I was
live
like,
at Daryl's, right? Or,
yes.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's
It's
a
so
great
brilliant.
idea.
And so that's what I want this show to be. And I'm so glad you were our first guest, Terry, because I really
I'm the absolute first guest.
Yes, you're the absolute.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you meant just like the first sort of boneheaded drummer guest or something. No, all right. So the first,
our first guest, and this is our first episode, and this is going to be a monthly edition. So
cool.
I hope you come back because I think you're awesome.
Well, thank you. I'll come back.
Yeah. And I just have this vision of Pulscension being this space where we can all hang out and talk about music and talk about how it's changed our lives. And like you, Terry, I would love to interview Robert Plant. So maybe between you and I, we can send out enough mojo, because he did have a psychic that traveled with him actually on 2 separate tours. And he is very much that tarot card folk guy you're talking about. And my very favorite song of his of all time is Silver Rider. And I think what band is that, Scott? It's his newer band. What's it called?
Well, I think the album was House of Cards.
Yeah, I think so. I think. Oh, I can't either. I should know. But anyway, Silver Rider is my favorite Robert Plant song. It's so great. I actually named my car after it because I love it so much. But anyway,
I'll look that up while we're on here. I will look it up.
Silver Rider. It's like my favorite Robert Plant song. It's super rad. There's also a Robert Plant song where he sings with Tori Amos, and they actually redo Down by the Seaside.
No, really?
Yeah, and it's so awesome. Him and Tori Amos, and they take it down and slow it down and do a duet together. And
Band of Joy.
Oh yeah, it's Band of Joy. So it's Robert Plant, Band of Joy, Silver Rider.
Oh, the Band of Joy. Yeah, okay.
You guys got to listen to that song. It's one of my favorite. But yeah, the Tori Amos, there was actually a album where they did a bunch of remakes of Led Zeppelin songs with different singers and things. But Robert Plant sang with Tori Amos doing that song, and it was pretty epic. So it's definitely worth listening to too. But I think, this is time flies in the Buddhist biohacker for sure. And I think, what are your parting words, Terry? Like,
yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like I'm talking you guys to death, like blah 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 blah.
That's why you're here. That's why you're our guest.
No, but I would say, I just remember when I was a kid. I just remember how music, like I remember, like it's so funny, like ASMR, right? We can, like, when people talk about ASMR, it's such a big thing now. But I remember when we were kids, and I used to wait for like Sesame Street to come on or whatever. or you'd sit there, or electric company or whatever the heck it was. But I remember there was this woman, and I don't know if it was a local Chicago, because it was in Chicago. We grew up in a suburb of Chicago, and she wore a leotard, and she sort of did stretching and stuff. And so she's like the ultimate. I've never found her here on YouTube. I've never looked at, but you have Bob Ross and stuff.
Yeah.
But she had this thing where she'd be like, and at the time I hated it because I was like, God, I want Woody Woodpecker on, and I watch this and I feel like I'm going to fall asleep. But I remember that kind of concept is when we were little. Like, you remember watching Bob Ross and remember like kind of being like just that feeling of just like, it's like when you have your head gently rubbed. Not everybody likes that. Some people, you start rubbing their head, they're like, don't touch me. But other people, it's just so soothing. But music, or even just sound, sometimes not even necessarily a chordal framework or anything, has that same, just, like when they tap, like the clickety click, like when they do the thing with the nails, or there's just something that, often it's music that does it, but sometimes it's just sound. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so sometimes there doesn't even have to even be like an A = 440 or a metronome marking or a tempo, but it helps. Yeah. But I would just say that, like you were talking about that one fellow that has the channel where he uses songs. What's the last name? Green?
It's Jeff Strong.
Strong. I'm sorry. Okay, it's Jeff Strong. Okay. I mean, that's brilliant. I don't know. Parting words, I would just say, you always got to keep music in your life. Totally. But what I was saying before, we talked about this before. Remember, before we kind of went on air, and your pop had mentioned it, that sometimes, like, when you're in a bad place, if you've had a wrong day, you have some stuff going on in your mind, what happens is sometimes fear and stress, oftentimes your brain doesn't know that it's not helping you by thinking something to death. Because, you think about it, like you just think you have to keep thinking about it as if, the only time you have to think, your brain has to be that active. If right now, if a tiger came in the room and was lit, like right now, suddenly a Bengal tiger was right there, was about, it's okay then to freak out and do it, but I think sometimes with music and stuff, you can, I guess the point I'm making is if you're feeling down, don't listen to sad songs. You know what I mean? If you're feeling really anxious, don't listen to death metal. Do you know what I'm saying? If you're feeling, you know what I mean? Because really, I could say, I know there's sometimes, if I know, like, with OC and with stress and anxiety and stuff, and I can just tell if there's a day, if I'm thinking about something, if a song comes on that I otherwise would like the song Sailing, Christopher Cross. But if I, have something happen, or somebody I knew passed away or something, I will absolutely actively not listen to that. Like, you can actually be proactive with music one way or the other. Like, prevent, like they say, like, people, places, and things, you can protect yourself. You can't control them, but you can control whether you expose yourself to those things. You can also do that with music too. Like, there's little tools you can do. I know it sounds so silly, but do you know the point I'm trying to make?
Yeah, well, and it's not silly at all. I mean, I think it's really important. It is. It's important.
I had a salesman, real great salesman for me up in Montana, and when he felt down, he put on Christmas music.
Oh yeah, but
no matter what time of year, he'd put on Christmas music.
Yeah, it just probably brought him back to a time that, like the opposite of a traumatic experience. People relive traumatic experiences. Sometimes it's good to find things that were great, that weren't traumatic. They were the exact opposite, and try to sit and spend some time with those. If you can sit and be burdened by something terrible that happened to you, you can sit. It's like when I know this is going to sound inappropriate, but I just have to say it because it just popped in my mind. Do you remember in the movie with Bill Murray, Groundhog Day?
Mm-hmm.
When he's like, and I was with this girl in Tahiti. Why can't I live that day over and over? But that kind of thing. Like, there's no law that says you have to, you can do your best to get those bad things and stuff. Do your best to just not think about them. You know what I mean? And then proactively look for things like your friend with the Christmas music, or sometimes somebody might, like they talk about, I was really upset. And I went to my mom's house and she made me a ham sandwich. And God, I haven't had a ham sandwich at my mom's house. Like, sometimes then just sitting and having that ham sandwich, or just, even if you don't talk to somebody, even if it can, and you feel it when it happens, you can feel when that stress goes, you can feel yourself relax. There's like a certain feeling you get where it just feels like the cognitive dissonance, I guess I'll say, just kind of gets sucked out of you. And it's a great feeling. And you can work at that. You know, it's not, you know, you can try to develop some control with music or with sounds or whatever, you know, try to keep the influences positive.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Totally. Well, and as the only girl here, I'll say, when a girl needs to scream, we put Alanis Morissette on and we do.
Oh yeah, that's what I.
So that's our therapy too.
Yeah, she's like the patron saint of get that anger out because it'll kill you.
Yeah, sometimes you have to get it out.
You do. You got to get it out. That's what they say. Depression is anger turned inside out. You know, for whatever reason, you decided not to, to follow the normal route of getting it out. It all just stays in there and gunks you up. You know.
So true. So true. Scott, what about you? Do you have any parting words of wisdom for us today? First show with your wife ever?
Here, words of wisdom is we'll run through the list of questions before we roll tape.
Oh yeah, for next time, like for the.
Dude, that's the beauty of live, though. I think it's so fun to just have organic conversations because it's way more interesting than if you're like, "Oh, what's this?" and then answer.
With number one, I love jazz and I love improv. I really do.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's when the best stuff comes out, and so keep it loose. And I think the community stuff that Lisa's working towards, right? To keep it all together. Terry and I know the coolest guy in the band all the time is always the drummer, always, without exception. I mean, it's without fail. So it's easy for us to have a hang and just shoot the breeze. I think if we keep doing it and get more drummers, maybe we'll break and add a bass player or even a guitarist, probably a vocalist, never a singer, but we'll see. But
I don't think bass players could handle being on a live show. No,
you just got to get the right person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Scott.
But so Terry, I want to thank you for doing this because it takes a lot of courage to just jump into this kind of subject matter and the touchy-feely stuff, and having you.
Well, you know what the thing is you realize that there's like you can remember the feeling, when you're like with somebody and like and what happens is if you've worked together for somebody for a long time, eventually you get on each other's nerves, and then somebody does something and then you shout at each other for a couple minutes, and then but you realize the feeling of like letting that pressure out. You know what I mean? It's like it's a pop back to equilibrium.
Yeah, right.
And there's no point, this isn't the Puritan age anymore. We don't have to walk around and keep our, we can just, you can just say what's on your mind. You know what I mean? You can, if something bothers you, you say something about it. They're just because something has been done for so long, or there's certain traditions where, keep that stiff upper lip, big boys don't cry. Well, let me just tell you something. You cry for a reason. You know what I mean? You get upset for a reason. There's chemicals and tears that you get out. It's anytime you ever circumvent a natural human emotion, there's going to be some repercussion down the road, I think, especially if it's systemic, if like constantly always gets subverted to, feeling like you're the bad guy or the bad person. And when you're getting those things they're terrible. I mean, they can really wreak havoc on you, and whatever it takes for us as people to, to take it, to do something about it. Yeah. It's good. You realize, you can do something about it,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, we picked the right guest, Lisa.
We did.
Well, this would be cool. You guys are going to get world famous. And then it'll be like when they had Bill Murray do the first guest on David Letterman, and then he was the last guest. You ever see that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So I'll be the last guest. You guys will have like your New York offices, and I'll be like, hey guys.
Yeah, hopefully it's not next month.
Yeah.
Terry again. Terry Keating, ladies and gentlemen.
Well,
Yeah,
thanks, Scott. Thanks, you guys. Thanks,
So
Mr. Gunshore. Thanks, Lisa.
I know
Yeah.
Terry's got a couple of elbow injuries. So Scott, can you
Oh, yeah,
start
yeah.
off with a little intro to rock and roll?
Not rock and
Put you
roll.
on the spot a little bit.
Oh, the rock and roll.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm gonna do. I don't want to step on Mr. Keating's Bonham stuff. So I'll just lead us out with some funky beats. How about that?
Yes, that's just play
Yes.
on those beautiful Gretsch drums.
Yeah, some
Yes.
funky Gretsch.
Yes. Oh wait, we got to hear that. We got to hear the gong. Can we hear the gong before? So we never heard the gong.
Oh my gosh.
We got to hear the gong. Scott, that was awesome. But I just thought of me. We got to hear the gong too.
Hold
Let's
on.
hear that big. Is that like 24 inches? Do you know how big it is? The diameter?
24.
24. Okay.
Yeah, and it's tuned to the planet of Neptune.
Oh, get out of here. Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go. Neptune.
Here, I'll.
Warm it up a little.
Yeah, I think I only have one mallet here.
No, that's cool. Here, let me turn it up. And when I hear that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Wow. Wow. That's awesome. That's a great gong. Pisces makes great stuff, man.
They do. And
Look at that technique. Scott's all like, no, just let me show you when you play a gong. No, really, that's I'm always just kind of like I remember back in when you're doing the Zeppelin thing, and you hit the gong for like Stairway to Heaven, like da 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 da, and you hit the gong and you don't have time to grab the mallet, so you just smack it with your elbow. Yeah.
I'm guessing that's how you get injured, though.
Yes, I'm telling you, I have tennis elbow here and golfer's elbow here, but I'm just getting old, and I just have to, stretch and deal with it, because I'm not giving up drumming.
Well, I know we've got to go, but I will say with this gong, there's actually these mallets that make whale noises on this Neptune gong, and it's super. Talk about some trippy sound stuff is making the whale sounds, and on this gong, it's like the most awesome thing ever.
Oh my God, that must be cool. Like that kind of stuff.
Yes, it totally does. It's pretty epic. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Terry, for being our very first guest. And thank you to everybody who's watched. We're going to be back next month for Pulscension again with Jeff Strong, who again has literally written all 8 editions of how to record music at home. And he is the founder of the Strong Institute. And he's a real dear friend of ours, and we love him so much. And we're going to keep the drumming coming. If you haven't subscribed to Buddhist Biohacker, please do. We have so much going on this channel. It's unbelievable. And we're back next week with huge guests next week. We have Aaron Abke coming on. That's pretty exciting. And the founder of Dry Farm Wines, Todd White, is going to be on, one of our great partners and supporters. So thank you, Terry.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Mr. Gunshore.
And we are going to leave you guys with some information. I did create my own social media app. It is committed to nonviolence and non-divisive language. Please join Ajatakasha. It's a free community. It's just like Facebook and how it works, but it is absolutely not like that at all. There's no ads, no algorithms, nothing. And it's a spiritual community. It's beautiful. And we do have a Pulscension group. So for all of the musicians who are looking to collaborate, come on in. And so much love to everybody out there. You guys, I know I love you so much. Have an incredible weekend and take care of yourselves.